June 3, 1945. A POW camp outside Manchester, England, 4:17 p.m. Lena Richter is trying very hard to focus on the laundry in front of her, industrial washers, steam, the smell of soap. She's been assigned to this detail for 3 weeks now, and she should be used to the routine by this point. The problem isn't the work. The problem is standing 15 feet away, demonstrating proper equipment maintenance to a new guard. Sergeant Thomas Bennett, 26 years old, dark hair, quiet manner, and a voice that does something strange to Lena's concentration every time he speaks. She scrubs harder at the uniform in her hands, pretending complete absorption in her task, but her eyes keep drifting toward where he's showing the new recruit how to adjust the water pressure valves. His hands move with careful precision. He explains things patiently, never raising his voice. Lena is 22 years old. She served as a radio operator in France until her unit surrendered 3 months ago. For 3 months, she's been a prisoner of war. For 3 weeks, she's been trying unsuccessfully not to notice Sergeant Bennett. This is dangerous territory. She knows it. But knowing something is inappropriate doesn't make it stop happening. Behind her, another prisoner, Katrin, former administrative clerk from Hamburg, whispers in German, "You're staring again." Lena jerks her attention back to the washing. "I'm not staring." "You are absolutely staring at the sergeant again." "I'm just observing, making sure we're following proper procedures." Katrin snorts quietly. "Is that what we're calling it?" "Because I've been watching you follow proper procedures for 3 weeks now, and it looks remarkably like you've developed a crush on your British supervisor." Lena feels heat rise in her cheeks. "That's absurd. We're prisoners. He's a guard. It's completely inappropriate." "And yet," Katrin says with infuriating accuracy, "you can't stop watching him." The thing is, Katrin isn't wrong. Lena has been watching Sergeant Bennett for 3 weeks with an attention she can't quite justify or explain. It started small, noticing he was different from the other guards. Quieter, more thoughtful. Where other guards barked orders, he simply asked. Where others maintained rigid distance, he treated prisoners like people who happened to be on the wrong side of a war. Then Lena started noticing other things. The way he carried himself with understated confidence. The way he listened when prisoners spoke, actually listening, rather than just waiting for them to finish. The way his rare smiles transformed his serious face into something warm and genuine. And then, most dangerously, she started noticing physical details. The line of his jaw, the way his hands moved when he was explaining something, the particular timbre of his voice when he spoke quietly. This is the problem with being imprisoned for months. Small observations become magnified. Minor interactions take on disproportionate significance, and a guard who treats you with basic human decency can start occupying far too much of your mental space. The work detail ends at 5 p.m. The women file out of the laundry building toward the barracks. Sergeant Bennett holds the door, standing aside to let them pass. "Evening, ladies," he says in his careful German. His accent is terrible, but he tries. That effort matters more than the grammar. Most of the women nod and continue past. Lena finds herself slowing, meeting his eyes for just a moment. "Guten Abend, Sergeant." "Your English is improving," he says, switching languages. "You've been practicing?" "The library books help." The camp has a small library. Lena has been reading everything she can find. English grammar, English novels, anything to improve her vocabulary. "What are you reading now?" "Dickens, Great Expectations." She pauses, feeling bold. "It's fitting, perhaps?" A story about expectations and reality being different. Something flickers in Bennett's expression. Recognition, maybe. Understanding that she's talking about more than just a book. "I hope reality is proving better than expectations," he says quietly. "In some ways, yes. In others." She trails off. "How do you explain to your captor that he's the complication, that his kindness and decency have created expectations you never anticipated? That propaganda promised monsters, but reality delivered someone far more difficult to categorize?" "In others, it's more complicated," she finishes. "Complicated is honest," Bennett says. Then, with a slight smile, "Better than simple lies, anyway." He holds her gaze for a moment longer than strictly necessary. Then Katrin calls from the door, "Lena, are you coming?" And the moment breaks. Lena hurries after the other women, her heart doing something she can't quite name. That evening in the barracks, the conversation inevitably turns to the guards. It always does. The women have little else to discuss. The monotony of camp life means that small observations become major topics. "The new one is very young," someone observes. "The corporal who started last week. He looks about 17. "The Scottish one with the impossible accent has a wife," another adds. "I saw photographs when his locker was open during inspection." Katrin looks meaningfully at Lena. "And what about Sergeant Bennett? Any observations?" Several women laugh knowingly. Apparently Lena hasn't been as subtle as she thought. "What about him?" Lena says, trying for casual indifference and failing completely. "Oh, come now." Frida, another laundry worker, joins in. "You've been watching him for weeks." "We've all noticed. The question is whether he's noticed." "There's nothing to notice," Lena insists. "He's professional." "I'm a prisoner. That's all there is." "Except," Katrin says gently, "you wish there was more." "Don't you?" Lena lies on her bunk, staring at the ceiling. The honest answer is yes. Yes, she wishes things were different. Wishes the circumstances were normal. Wishes she'd met Thomas Bennett in a world where they weren't enemy and prisoner, guard and captive. But wishes don't change reality. And reality is that she's a German POW, and he's a British sergeant, and nothing can happen between them, even if, and this is the truly dangerous thought, even if he might feel something too. She thinks about that moment at the door, the way he looked at her, the carefully chosen words about reality being complicated. Was she reading too much into it? Seeing what she wanted to see because camp life was lonely and boring and he represented something different? Probably, almost certainly. But that doesn't stop her from replaying the conversation, analyzing every word, every glance. This is absurd. She's 22 years old, a trained radio operator, an intelligent woman who should have better control over her emotions. Instead, she's lying in a prison barracks thinking about a British sergeant's rare smiles and the particular way he pronounces German words with his terrible accent. The next day brings an unexpected development. Lena is called to the camp commandant's office. Her stomach drops. Being summoned to administration usually means trouble. Captain Morrison, the camp commandant, sits behind his desk with Sergeant Bennett standing nearby. Lena's anxiety spikes. What has she done wrong? Has someone reported her inappropriate attention? Is Bennett here to formally complain? "Fräulein Richter," Morrison begins in accented German, "please sit." She sits, trying to keep her hands from shaking. "Sergeant Bennett has made a recommendation," Morrison continues. "He believes you would be suitable for a new position. We need a translator for administrative work. Your English has improved significantly. He suggested you for the role." Lena looks at Bennett, surprised. He meets her gaze steadily, his expression professional, but something else flickering underneath. "It would mean working in the admin building," Morrison continues. "Different schedule. More interaction with staff. More responsibility." He pauses. Also better rations and small wages. Are you interested? Is she interested? The position means escape from laundry monotony, means intellectual stimulation, means, and this is the dangerous part, means working more closely with Sergeant Bennett, who apparently recommended her specifically. "Yes, sir," she hears herself say. "I'm very interested." "Good. You start Monday. Sergeant Bennett will supervise your training." After she's dismissed, Lena waits outside the building, her mind racing. Bennett emerges a few minutes later, clearly expecting to find her there. "You recommended me," she says in English. Not a question, a statement. "You're qualified. Your English is excellent. You're intelligent and reliable." He pauses. "Why wouldn't I recommend you?" "Because—" She struggles for words. "Because it means we'll be working together more. And that's—" "Complicated?" he finishes, echoing her word from yesterday. "Yes?" They stand in the afternoon sun, careful distance between them, aware that other guards and prisoners move past. The power dynamic remains. The circumstances haven't changed, but something unspoken passes between them anyway. "I can request a different supervisor if you're uncomfortable," Bennett offers quietly. "No," Lena says quickly. Too quickly. She sees his slight smile and realizes he knows. He knows she's been watching him. He knows about the attraction she's been trying to hide. And he recommended her for this position anyway. "Monday then," he says. 0800 hours. Admin building. "Monday," she agrees. The translation work proves challenging and engaging. Lena sits at a desk in a small office, working through documents, letters, administrative paperwork. Bennett supervises, helping when her English falters, explaining British military terminology, patient with her questions. They work in close proximity, professional, appropriate, and yet the attraction doesn't disappear. If anything, it intensifies. Working together means conversations, real conversations beyond guard-prisoner interactions. They discuss books. She learns he wanted to be a teacher before the war. He learns she'd planned to study linguistics. Small personal details accumulate. He takes his tea without sugar because wartime rationing made him used to it. She misses her grandmother's apple cake more than anything from home. He has a younger sister about Lena's age. She worries constantly about her brother, last seen fighting in Italy. These conversations happen in the margins of work, brief exchanges while filing documents, quiet words during tea breaks, never inappropriate, always professional, but intimate in their own way. One afternoon in late June, they're alone in the office. Bennett is showing Lena how to properly format a particular type of report. He's standing close, not inappropriately, just close enough to point at the document on her desk. She's acutely aware of his proximity, can smell the soap he uses, can see the small scar on his left hand, can feel the warmth of him standing beside her chair. He's explaining something about comma usage. She should be paying attention. Instead, she's thinking about how easy it would be to turn her head, to look up at him, to close that small distance. "Lena!" His voice brings her back. She realizes he's finished explaining and is waiting for her response. "I'm sorry." "I was?" She can't finish, can't admit where her thoughts went. "Distracted?" he says quietly. Not a question. "Yes?" He should step back, maintain professional distance. Instead, he stays where he is, looking down at her with an expression that makes her breath catch. "I should reassign you," he says. "This is becoming—" He stops, searching for words. "Complicated," Lena whispers. "Very complicated." "Will you? Reassign me?" A long pause. "No." "Why not?" "Because," Bennett says carefully, "these conversations are the only thing that makes this war and this prison and all of this bearable. And I'm selfish enough not to give that up, even though I should." The honesty of it strikes her. He's admitting something dangerous, something that could get him in trouble, something that violates the guard-prisoner dynamic entirely. I tried not to stare, Lena admits quietly. In the laundry. At you. I tried very hard not to notice you. It didn't work. I know, I noticed you noticing. And you still recommended me for this position? Like I said, selfish. They're crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed. Both know it. Neither stops. The summer passes. The war ends officially in Europe. Japan surrenders in August. The world begins the slow process of rebuilding. But POW camps don't empty overnight. Repatriation takes time, processing, documentation. Lena remains at the Manchester camp through summer and into autumn, still translating, still working with Bennett. The attraction hasn't faded. If anything, it's deepened into something more complex. Not just physical attraction anymore. Genuine affection, understanding, the kind of connection that forms between people who've spent months in close proximity, having honest conversations. But the barriers remain. She's still technically a prisoner. He's still her supervisor. The power dynamic makes anything more than professional friendship impossible, inappropriate, wrong, and yet. One October afternoon, Bennett brings news. Your repatriation papers came through. You'll be processed next week, sent back to Germany. Lena knew this was coming, has known for months. It still hits like a physical blow. I see. I could. Bennett starts, then stops. No, never mind. What? Nothing. It's not appropriate. Thomas. She's never used his first name before. The intimacy of it makes him look at her sharply. What were you going to say? I was going to ask if I could write to you. After you're released. If I could, stay in contact. Is that allowed? Probably not. Then we shouldn't. No, we shouldn't. They look at each other across the small office. Months of unspoken feelings, months of careful professional distance, months of wanting something that circumstances made impossible. I'll miss our conversations, Lena says quietly. So will I. It should end there. Professional goodbye. Both moving on with their lives. Former prisoner, former guard, nothing more. Instead, Bennett does something he's never done before. He reaches across the desk and takes her hand. Just for a moment. Gentle pressure. Then he releases it and steps back. Be safe, he says. Build a good life. Find someone who. He doesn't finish. Who what? Who can give you things I can't? Normal circumstances. No war between you. No prison walls. Lena leaves Manchester the following week, returns to Germany, to a devastated country trying to rebuild. She finds work, she survives, she moves forward, but she doesn't forget Thomas Bennett, doesn't forget the British sergeant she couldn't help watching, doesn't forget months of complicated, impossible attraction. 3 years later, 1948, a letter arrives at her address in Munich. British postmark. Inside, careful handwriting. Dear Lena, I hope this letter finds you. I hope it's not unwelcome. I told myself for 3 years I wouldn't write, that it was inappropriate, that we should both move on. I haven't moved on. I think about our conversations often, about the impossibly complicated situation we found ourselves in, about how wrong the timing was. The war is over. You're not a prisoner anymore. I'm no longer your supervisor. The circumstances that made things impossible have changed. If you're willing, I'd like to visit Munich. No expectations, no pressure, just see if what we both felt was real or just the product of circumstance. If you'd rather not, I understand completely. Thomas Bennett. Lena reads the letter 3 times. Her hands are shaking. The practical voice in her head says, "This is foolish." 3 years have passed. People change. Memory distorts. What felt significant in a POW camp might be nothing in the real world. But another voice, quieter but insistent, remembers his kindness, his intelligence, his rare smiles. The way conversations with him made prison bearable, the complicated, impossible attraction that never quite went away. She picks up her pen and begins writing. Dear Thomas, your letter is not unwelcome. I've thought about you often over these 3 years, wondered if what I felt was real or just the product of a confused time. I'd like to find out. Come to Munich. No expectations, as you said. Just, let's see, Lena? He arrives in November 1948. They meet at a cafe in Munich's slowly rebuilding center. It's awkward at first, the echo of their former dynamic, the strangeness of meeting as equals rather than prisoner and guard. But then they start talking, really talking, without the constraints of camp protocol. And Lena discovers something crucial. The connection wasn't just circumstance. The conversations still flow easily. His kindness is genuine. The attraction she felt, complicated, impossible, inappropriate, was based on something real. I tried not to stare, she admits over coffee. Back in the laundry. At you. Katrin teased me mercilessly about it. I know, Thomas says, with that rare smile she remembers. I was very aware of you watching me. Were you? Of course. I was watching you too, trying not to be obvious about it, apparently failing since you noticed. They laugh, the first real unguarded laughter between them. This is strange, Lena says. Good strange. But strange. Very strange. Former prisoner, former guard, meeting in a Munich cafe to see if the impossible attraction was real. Is it? Real. Thomas reaches across the table and takes her hand, not furtively this time, not something to be hidden. Yes, he says simply. It's real. They marry in 1949. Thomas takes a teaching position in Munich. Lena completes her linguistics degree. They build a life together from the wreckage of war. Their children grow up bilingual, German and English, mixing naturally. When asked how their parents met, the story they tell is both truthful and incomplete. During the war. In England, it's complicated. And it was complicated, impossibly, inappropriately complicated. But sometimes the most complicated things, the attractions that shouldn't happen, the connections that cross enemy lines, the feelings that emerge in the strangest circumstances, those are the ones that last. Lena never quite stopped staring at Thomas Bennett. Even 50 years later, married and gray-haired, she still caught herself watching him with that same attention. The way he moved, the way he spoke, the kindness that first caught her notice in a prison camp laundry room. "You're staring again," he'd say with amusement. "I tried not to," she'd reply. "It never worked." "Good," he'd say. "Don't stop." Their story proved something important about human nature. That attraction doesn't follow rules, that connections form in the most unlikely places, that sometimes the most inappropriate feelings, prisoner watching guard, enemy drawn to enemy, can become the foundation for something lasting. The war tried to make them enemies. Propaganda insisted they should hate each other. Circumstances placed them on opposite sides of prison walls. But Lena couldn't help watching Thomas Bennett, and that simple, impossible attraction became a life built together. Sometimes trying not to stare doesn't work. Sometimes the things we resist most strongly are exactly what we need. Sometimes the most complicated circumstances produce the most honest connections. Lena Richter tried not to stare at the British sergeant who supervised her work detail. She failed completely. And that failure, that inability to ignore an attraction that shouldn't have existed, became the beginning of everything that mattered.